If you are divorced, widowed, or never married, do not assume your Social Security check is correct just because it arrives every month. That check may be based on the wrong record, it may be missing a higher benefit, it may be ignoring a former spouse, a deceased spouse, or years of earnings that were never reviewed correctly. And here is the dangerous part. Social Security is not going to sit across the table from you and say, before we pay this smaller amount, let us check every possible record that might give you more. That is not how the system works. The system does not care that your divorce was painful. It does not care that your spouse died and the bills kept coming. It does not care that you stayed single and had to carry retirement alone. It looks at records, it processes claims, and if the wrong benefit path is triggered, the smaller check can keep coming like everything is normal. That is how seniors get underpaid without realizing it. Not because they were lazy, not because they were careless, but because they trusted the check more than they questioned the record behind it. In this video, we are going to break down the 3 groups Social Security often leaves confused: divorced seniors, widows and widowers, and never married seniors. Each group has a different trap. If you are divorced, your ex-spouse's record may still matter. If you are widowed, the survivor benefit may be the larger check. And if you were never married, your own earnings record becomes even more important because there may be no backup record to save you from a mistake. By the end, you will know what to ask, what to check, and what mistake may be keeping your monthly benefit smaller than it should be. This is not about begging Social Security for money. This is about forcing the correct review. Because the worst Social Security mistake is not being divorced, widowed, or never married. The worst mistake is assuming the system already checked every dollar for you. Before we talk about divorce, widowhood, or never being married, you need to understand the trap that catches single retirees first. The trap is believing your Social Security check is automatically the best check available. That sounds reasonable. This is a federal system. They have your name, they have your Social Security number, they have your work history, they know your age, they know when you filed. So most people assume the system must have checked everything. That assumption can cost you money because Social Security is not built to act like your personal retirement investigator. It pays based on records, it pays based on claims, it pays based on the benefit path that gets triggered, and that is where the problem starts. A retiree may have more than one possible record connected to their life. There is your own work record, there may be a current spouse's record, there may be an ex-spouse's record, there may be a deceased spouse's record, there may even be a deceased ex-spouse's record. But if the better path is never reviewed, the larger benefit may never enter the conversation. That is why the question cannot be, am I getting Social Security? That question is too weak. A check arriving every month only proves one thing. It proves you are getting something. It does not prove you are getting the highest amount your situation allows, and that is the single retiree trap. You get used to the deposit. You build your bills around it. You tell yourself, this must be correct. Meanwhile, a former marriage, a deceased spouse, a filing age decision, or a wrong earnings year may change the answer. Most seniors do not lose money because no rule exists. They lose money because nobody asked the question that opened the better path. Social Security is not your financial planner. It is not your divorce attorney. It is not your widow advocate. It processes what the claim triggers. And if the claim triggers the smaller path, the smaller check can become your normal. This is where underpayment starts, not with a missing dollar, with a missing question. Now let's start with the group that gets ignored because they think divorce ended everything. If your marriage lasted 10 years or longer, do not make the mistake of thinking divorce erased every Social Security connection. Divorce may have ended the relationship. It may have ended the household, the property fight, and the paperwork, but it did not automatically erase the Social Security record, and this is where many divorced seniors lose money quietly. They say, that was years ago. They say, I do not want anything from my ex. They say, my divorce papers said everything was settled. But Social Security is not asking whether the marriage ended emotionally. It is asking whether the federal benefit rules connect you to that record. And if they do, your ex-spouse's work history may still matter. For a divorced spouse benefit, the basic rules are simple, but most people never hear them clearly. The marriage generally had to last at least 10 years. You generally must be unmarried. You generally must be at least 62. Your own retirement benefit must be lower than what the divorced spouse benefit can pay. And your ex-spouse must be entitled to Social Security retirement or disability benefits or old enough under the special divorced spouse rule. But this does not mean you receive your ex-spouse's full check. A divorced spouse benefit is generally based on a portion of that record, and if your own retirement benefit is already higher, there may be no extra amount added. Now listen carefully, because this is where the myths start stealing money. Myth number 1. My divorce decree said I gave up rights to everything. That may matter for property, that may matter for support, that may matter for assets between you and your former spouse. But a private divorce agreement does not rewrite SSA's federal benefit rules. If the federal rules say you qualify for divorced spouse benefits, your divorce decree does not erase that right. Your divorce decree may have ended the marriage. It did not become the boss of federal Social Security law. Myth number 2. If I claim on my ex-spouse's record, I will hurt their check. That fear keeps a lot of divorced seniors quiet. They do not want to fight. They do not want a phone call. They do not want the ex-spouse, the new spouse, or the family drama. But claiming on an ex-spouse's record does not mean you are stealing their check. It does not normally reduce your ex-spouse's monthly benefit. It does not normally reduce their current spouse's benefit. You do not need your ex's permission. You need the correct record checked. Myth number 3. My ex has not filed yet, so I cannot do anything. Not always. If your divorce has been final for at least 2 continuous years and your ex-spouse is at least 62, you may not need to wait for them to file first. That rule matters because some ex-spouses delay filing, some refuse to cooperate, some disappear from your life completely, but your benefit rights should not depend on whether your ex feels helpful. Let me make this real. Linda is 67. She was married for 12 years. She has been divorced for 15 years. Her own Social Security check is $1,100. Her ex-spouse had a stronger earnings record. For years, Linda assumed divorce meant there was nothing to ask about. Nobody told her the 10-year marriage mattered. Nobody told her her ex's current spouse would not lose money because she asked. So she kept accepting the check that arrived. The problem was not that Social Security had no rule for her. The problem was that nobody forced the comparison. She did not need a fight with her ex. She needed SSA to check the correct record. So if you are divorced, do not ask a weak question like, can I get more? Ask direct questions. Am I being paid only on my own record? Do I qualify for divorced spouse benefits? Was my marriage length verified? Did you compare my benefit to my ex-spouse's record? Does the 2-year divorced spouse rule apply in my case? If I file for my own retirement benefit, does deemed filing automatically apply to my ex-spouse record? And if I am denied, what exact rule disqualifies me? A vague no does not teach you anything. You need the reason. Was the marriage too short? Are you remarried? Is your own benefit already higher? Is the ex-spouse not old enough? Or was the record never properly checked? Divorce may feel final emotionally, but financially, the Social Security record may still matter. And if divorce is one place seniors miss money, widowhood is where the mistake can become even more painful. When a spouse dies, the bills do not die with them. The mortgage does not feel sorry for you. The electric company does not lower the bill because you are grieving. The grocery store does not care that one income disappeared. And in many homes, that is exactly what happens. One Social Security check stops. The surviving spouse is left with one check, one household, and the same rising costs. That is why survivor benefits are not just a technical rule. They can be the difference between barely surviving and having enough breathing room to keep the house stable. But here is the mistake. A lot of widows and widowers assume Social Security will automatically place them on the best possible benefit. They think, my spouse died. They know they will fix it. Do not assume that. You need to know which benefit you are receiving. Your own retirement benefit, a survivor benefit, or a combination that brings you up to the higher amount, because the check that arrives after a death is not always the full answer. Survivor benefits can begin as early as age 60. They can begin as early as age 50 if the survivor has a qualifying disability. But early does not mean full. The exact survivor percentage depends on your birth year and your survivor full retirement age. But if you claim as early as 60, the survivor check can be as low as about 72%. Waiting can raise that amount, up to 100% at survivor full retirement age. Do not mix survivor rules with regular spouse rules. Survivor benefits can have different timing and switching options, so the exact comparison matters. The real question is not just, can I get something? That question is too small. The real question is, which benefit pays more and when? That is where widowed seniors get trapped. A widow may stay on her own retirement check, even though the survivor benefit could pay more. A widower may claim survivor benefits early without understanding the permanent reduction. A surviving divorced spouse may never ask about a deceased ex-spouse's record, even after a marriage that lasted 10 years or longer. A senior may remarry and assume that destroyed everything without checking the actual rule. And sometimes, the most painful mistake is the simplest one. The surviving spouse is grieving. They are dealing with funeral papers, bank accounts, insurance calls, medical bills, and family pressure. So when Social Security gives them an answer, they accept it. They do not push. They do not ask for a comparison. They do not ask what happens if they wait. They do not ask whether their own benefit and survivor benefit were both reviewed, and that silence can cost money for years. Let me make this real. Margaret is 64. Her husband died 2 years ago. She receives her own retirement check. His benefit was higher, but after the funeral, she was exhausted. She called Social Security, reported the death, answered the questions, and assumed everything that needed to happen had happened. Nobody sat her down and explained the strategy. Nobody said, Margaret, let us compare your own benefit against the survivor benefit. Nobody said, taking survivor benefits now may be different from waiting. So she kept receiving a smaller check, thinking the system had already protected her. That is the danger. She was not short because Social Security had no rule for her. She was short because nobody forced the survivor comparison. And widowed does not always mean current spouse only. If you were divorced and that marriage lasted 10 years or longer, a deceased ex-spouse's record may also matter. That is why surviving divorced spouses need to ask the question directly. Do not assume the word ex shuts the door. Do not assume death closed the record. Ask. Now, remarriage is another place where seniors get confused. Remarriage before age 60 can affect survivor rights. Remarriage after age 60 may not block survivor benefits on the prior deceased spouse's record. But this is not something to guess about. This is something to verify before you make a decision that changes your income. So if you are widowed, do not walk away with a vague answer. Ask SSA, am I receiving my own retirement benefit, a survivor benefit, or a combination? What would the survivor amount be at my current age? What would it be if I wait? Did my deceased spouse claim early? Does my deceased ex-spouse's record pay more? Can I take one benefit now and switch later? Does remarriage affect my case? These are not small questions. These are the questions that decide whether the surviving spouse gets the right check or just the first check. When someone dies, the surviving spouse should not also lose money because nobody explained the benefit choice. Now stop here, because if you were never married, this is where most videos forget you completely. They talk to divorced people. They talk to widows. Then they act like never married seniors have no issue to check. That is wrong. You may not have a spouse record behind you. You may not have an ex-spouse record behind you. You may not have a survivor record waiting in the background. But that means your own record has to be even cleaner, even stronger, and even more carefully reviewed. Because if your check is based only on your own work history, then one wrong earnings year, one early claiming mistake, or one missing recalculation can follow you every single month. The system was not designed with you in mind. But that does not mean your check should go unchecked. If you were never married, the Social Security problem is different. You are usually not asking about a spouse record. You are usually not asking about a divorced spouse record. You are usually not asking about a survivor record. Your check usually stands on one thing, your own record, and that is exactly why you cannot treat it casually. Because when there is no second record behind you, your own earnings history has to be right. Your claiming age has to be understood. Your reductions have to be clear. Your credits have to be checked. And your post-retirement work must not disappear into the system without a review. Never married seniors are often treated like the simple case. No spouse, no divorce, no survivor claim. Just file and move on. That sounds simple, but simple does not mean safe. If your earnings record has missing years, your check may be smaller. If an employer reported the wrong wages, your check may be smaller. If you worked self-employment years and the income was not reported correctly, your check may be smaller. If you claimed early without understanding the permanent reduction, your check may be smaller for life. If you kept working after you claimed and never checked whether SSA recalculated your benefit, you may be leaving money on the table. And if you waited past full retirement age, you need to make sure delayed retirement credits were actually reflected in your amount. This is why never married does not mean there is nothing to check. It means there is no backup record to hide the mistake. Let me make this real. Arthur is 69. He never married. He worked warehouse jobs, part-time jobs, and some self-employment years. Some years were strong. Some years were low. Some years looked wrong on his Social Security earnings record, but he never checked them carefully because he assumed the system already had the correct numbers. And because Arthur never had a spouse, he assumed there was no other Social Security question to ask. But that assumption was the trap. His issue was not a spouse benefit. His issue was whether his own record was correct. Because Social Security retirement is based heavily on your earnings history. And if the earnings history is wrong, the check built on top of it may also be wrong. So if you were never married, do not let anyone make you feel like this video is not for you. Your question is not, can I claim on someone else? Your question is my own record clean enough to trust? Log into your My Social Security account. Check every earnings year. Look for 0 years that should not be 0. Look for low years that do not match what you actually earned. Ask whether post-claim earnings changed your benefit. Ask whether your claiming age permanently reduced your check. Ask whether delayed retirement credits were applied if you waited past full retirement age. And if your income and resources are very low, ask about SSI separately, but do not confuse the two. SSI is not the same as Earned Social Security Retirement. It is a separate needs-based federal program for people with limited income and resources. Your Social Security retirement check comes from your work record. SSI is based on financial need. Those are different conversations, but both may matter if your monthly income is tight. The point is simple. If your own record is the only record, then that record cannot be treated casually. Because for never married seniors, there may be no spouse record to rescue a mistake, no ex-spouse record to compare, no survivor record to switch into later. That means every year, every wage entry, every filing age decision, and every recalculation matters more. The system may treat you like the easy case. Do not make that mistake yourself. Now here is where you need to be careful. Do not call Social Security with a vague question. Vague questions get vague answers. If you ask, "Am I getting the right amount?" you may hear, "You are receiving benefits." That is not enough. That only confirms a check exists. It does not confirm that every eligible record was compared. It does not confirm that your divorce history was reviewed. It does not confirm that a survivor benefit was checked. It does not confirm that your earnings record is correct. And it does not confirm that your claiming age, reductions, or switching options were explained clearly. So do not walk in hoping the right question appears by accident. Walk in with the question already written down. Start with these questions. They cover your records. Am I being paid on my own record only? Do I qualify on an ex-spouse's record? Do I qualify on a deceased spouse's record? Do I qualify on a deceased ex-spouse's record? Was my marriage length verified? Those questions matter because they force the conversation away from a generic answer. You are not asking, do I get Social Security? You're asking, which record is paying me? Now ask the harder questions. These cover your options. Did you compare every eligible record? Is this amount reduced because I claimed early? Would waiting increase this benefit? Does remarriage affect my claim? Do I need a separate application for survivor benefits? If I am denied, what exact rule caused the denial? That last question is important. Do not accept a vague no. A vague no gives you nothing. You need to know the exact reason. Was the marriage too short? Are you currently remarried? Is your own benefit already higher? Did you claim too early? Is the ex-spouse not old enough? Is the deceased spouse's record lower than yours? Or was the record simply never checked the right way? There is a big difference between being truly ineligible and being poorly informed, and too many seniors walk away without knowing which one happened. Do not ask, "Can I get more money?" That is too broad. Ask, "Which record am I being paid on?" Ask, "What would change if I waited?" Ask, "What exact rule limits me?" You are not trying to sound difficult. You are trying to stop a smaller check from becoming your permanent normal. Because once you build your life around the wrong amount, the damage becomes quiet. You cut groceries, you delay repairs, you skip help you needed, you assume this is just retirement. But sometimes the problem is not retirement. Sometimes the problem is that nobody asked the question that opened the better path, and that is why the next part matters. Because even the right question can stall if you show up without the proof. Because even when the rule is on your side, the claim can still stall if the proof is missing. Margaret showed up asking about survivor benefits. She knew her husband had passed away. She knew they had been married. She knew his check had been higher, but she did not bring the death certificate. So the claim could not move that day. She left with another appointment, another delay, and another month of uncertainty. That is why documents matter. Not because paperwork is exciting, not because seniors need one more folder to worry about, but because the document proves the life event that opens the record. A marriage certificate can prove the marriage existed. A divorce decree can prove the marriage ended and help show how long it lasted. A death certificate can prove survivor status. An earnings record can expose a missing year. And an old SSA notice can show what benefit you were actually approved for. So before you call, before you visit, and before you assume nothing can be changed, gather your proof. You may need your Social Security number, your birth certificate or proof of age, your marriage certificate, your divorce decree, a death certificate if you are asking about survivor benefits, ex-spouse identifying information if you have it, bank information for direct deposit, recent SSA notices, and tax or earnings records if your work history looks wrong. Now, do not panic if you do not have every document sitting in one folder today. The point is not to scare you. The point is to stop you from walking into the conversation empty-handed, because vague memories can lead to vague answers. Proof forces the record to be checked, and this matters even more for divorced and widowed seniors. If you say, "I was married a long time," that may not be enough. How long? What date did it start? What date did it legally end? Was it at least 10 years? Was the person deceased? Were you remarried before or after age 60? Those details can change the answer. Do not let one missing paper become 6 more months of a lower check. If you walk in with vague memories, you may walk out with vague answers. Walk in with proof. Because the next mistake is the one that traps the most seniors. They assume, if I qualified, they would have told me. This is the mistake that traps the most seniors. They assume the system would have warned them. They assume if a divorced spouse benefit was available, someone would have mentioned it. They assume if a survivor benefit paid more, Social Security would have switched them automatically. They assume if an ex-spouse's record mattered, the system would have searched for it. They assume if their earnings record was wrong, someone would have caught it before the check started. That assumption feels reasonable, but it can be expensive because SSA is not your financial advisor. SSA is not your divorce lawyer. SSA is not your grief counselor. SSA is not your retirement strategist. It is a federal benefits system, and if the wrong life event, wrong record, wrong date, or wrong benefit type is never raised, the smaller check can keep coming. Month after month, year after year, quietly. That is why this problem is so dangerous. It does not always look like a denial letter. It does not always come with a red warning stamp. It does not always say, you are being underpaid. Sometimes it looks like a normal deposit, a check that arrives on time, a payment that seems official, a number you slowly get used to. And once you get used to it, you stop questioning it. You adjust your life around it. You cut the grocery bill. You delay the dental work. You stop fixing things around the house. You tell yourself retirement is just expensive. But sometimes the problem is not that retirement is expensive. Sometimes the problem is that the wrong record was never compared. If you are divorced, the missing question may be about your ex-spouse's record. If you are widowed, the missing question may be about survivor benefits. If you are a surviving divorced spouse, the missing question may be about a deceased ex-spouse's record. And if you were never married, the missing question may be about your own earnings history, early filing reduction, delayed credits, or post-claim recalculation. Different situations, same danger, assuming the system already checked everything. So if you are divorced, widowed, or never married, Social Security may owe you more than you think, but only if the correct record is checked, only if the right question is asked, only if the claim is reviewed against the facts of your life. The check arriving does not prove the check is right. It only proves the system is paying something, and something is not the same as everything you may be allowed to receive. So before another Social Security check comes and you simply accept it as normal, stop and do this. Pull your My Social Security account, check your earnings record, look at the years, look at the wages, look for 0 years that should not be 0. Look for low years that do not match your real work history. Then write down every marriage that lasted close to or more than 10 years. Do not guess. Write down the dates. When did it start? When did it legally end? Was there a divorce? Did that former spouse pass away? Then write down any deceased spouse or deceased ex-spouse information you have. That is the first half. Now, the harder questions. Ask SSA to compare your own record against every eligible spouse, ex-spouse, survivor, or surviving divorced spouse record. Ask whether your current check is reduced because you claimed early. Ask whether waiting would change a survivor benefit. Ask whether your own benefit is already higher, or whether another record could pay more. And if they say no, ask for the exact reason. Do not accept you are already receiving benefits as the full answer. That only tells you a check exists. It does not tell you whether the check is the highest one available under your facts. It does not tell you whether your divorce was reviewed. It does not tell you whether a deceased spouse's record was compared. It does not tell you whether your own earnings record is clean. And it does not tell you whether a filing decision years ago locked you into a smaller amount than you expected. This review may confirm your check is already correct, but that is still better than assuming without proof. You do not need to be rude. You do not need to argue, but you do need to be specific, because vague questions protect the system. Specific questions protect your check. If you are divorced, ask about the ex-spouse record. If you are widowed, ask about survivor benefits. If you are a surviving divorced spouse, ask about the deceased ex-spouse record, and if you were never married, ask whether your own record, credits, reductions, and recalculations are correct. If this helped you catch one question you never asked Social Security, press like so more seniors see it before they leave money sitting in the system. Because the worst Social Security mistake is not being divorced, widowed, or never married. The worst mistake is assuming the check is correct just because it arrived.